Hello, my name is Kai King of Hocus Media, and this is Newton's Wonderful World of Wood. So what got you interested in the woodwork to begin with, Newton?
And I was always building with wood anyway for my entire lifetime, but I got interested in building a wooden gear clock, which is just behind you, and
Oh yeah.
And from there on it's just escalated out of control.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, there's now over 300 clocks.
Yeah. How do you keep track of all the clocks?
Well, it's if I replace about 10 batteries a week, I won't even keep a clock battery average life of 2 years old. So it's just a continuous job of replacing batteries all the time, checking them out, seeing what time they're on. Yeah. And of course, daylight saving's a real nightmare, isn't it?
No, yeah. When did you start tinkering? What age did you start?
Oh, I can remember just mucking around with wood all my life, but and I've built various things, but now it's just the progress at the moment is just clocks at the moment. But I've moved into automata, and behind you is Colibri, the hummingbird, which is a tour de force in woodworking, because that is real engineering in wood. I put criteria on myself, which is not necessary, but the idea is to make it 100% of wood and be dismantled by hand without tools. And so to my knowledge and to the knowledge of the designer, that is still the only all wood example in the world, and no one else has been able to achieve that in the nearly 3 years old. It's almost 3 years old now, and so in 3 years no one's been able to emulate it again.
How did the hummingbird how did making this come to you? Like, what's the story behind it?
Well, the story behind it is I'm a member of the Australian Carousel network, and we meet at various places in Victoria 3 times a year, and it was an occasion in about 4 years ago in Wodonga. And we had a meeting there, and we're scrolling away, and a friend whom I'd never met before, he turned up to the Carousel meeting and suggested that I should look at the internet and have a look at those plans and see what to do about it. So I looked at it and said it was a challenge. Yes, I better have a go at doing that. And so then we moved on and built that. And that won first prize at Coonabarabran in the Australian Championships in April 2016. It was made in February 2016. And since then, my friends, and I use the word friends in inverted commas, are never happy with anything that I ever do. And so there's been numerous complaints about the fact that it doesn't have an eye, it doesn't have feathers in it, and it doesn't have a motor. And so we upped the challenge, and so we made another one with those features in it.
Yeah. So what's with all the dinosaurs?
Dinosaurs. Was at another Carousel meet in Wangaratta, and a friend had dinosaurs there, and I thought, well, that's pretty exciting. Let's do a dinosaur, and I didn't know that they breed, but they do. and there was one dinosaur a week ever since then, and there is well over 60 dinosaurs. There's a couple of dinosaur clocks on the wall over here. Obviously are not jigsaws, but every other dinosaur in the place is actually a jigsaw, and they're just clip together, just push together. There's no glue or anything like that. They just all push together. So,
How many jigsaws do you think you have in here?
well, I don't know. I'm into 3D jigsaws, which you know, there's a cabinet full of those over there, which are commercial ones. But I'm into different sorts of jigsaws. We start off with the standard jigsaw, which is, if you get into the book, you'll see that that's a standard jigsaw and the standard size that people cut them. And so what we do is we just lift the bar a little bit. So if you can make it in that size, obviously you can make it in this size. So that's a 33-piece jigsaw. But the object is, well, if you can get 33 pieces in it, obviously you can get a few more. So what we'll do is we'll make it 55, but 55 is good. But really 100 would be the way to go. So this you'd call a failure because it's only 91 pieces. So that could be considered a failure.
That's still a lot of pieces.
That's still a lot of pieces, yeah. But we do actually have the 100, so the 100 does actually exist. So, and the interesting thing about my jigsaws is the picture on the front, you see, is exactly the same as the picture on the back. So, effectively, that's a 200-piece jigsaw because you don't know which side is which. But if you can get 100 into it, what about 110? So then we just lift the gun. This, you know, we've just elevated it to stupidity, really. And the interesting thing about this jigsaw is this jigsaw has never been done because I don't think I'll live long enough to put it back together again. Can we see Australia up here?
Yeah.
Now, at the top, we actually have a Liberal voter and a Greens voter, and you can work out which is which. Right, okay. Now, we move down the line. Western Australia, they think they're the most important, so they should be right at the top, see? So, and you'll see that Western Australia finishes at the border. Nothing actually exists out here at all. Right, okay. Now, the same scenario in Victoria, and you see that even Canberra doesn't exist over there. See, Canberra doesn't, there's nothing there, and everything stops at the border. Same with Queensland, South Australia, New South Wales and whatever. And this is actually the proportion that Tasmania see themselves in relation to Australia. Okay.
I don't play a damn. I don't play a damn thing, man. I don't play a damn. I don't play a damn thing, man.
Now, I'm not really into Chinese dragons, although I do actually have one here, and that's just a little Chinese dragon, as you can see. Not much, yeah, not into them really, but anyway, we do actually have one. Right, okay, so we've actually got a Chinese dragon here, but we won't call it a Chinese dragon, we'll actually call it Nessie. Right, okay, so we actually have the Loch Ness Monster over there as well, but we've got it here. Now, this is a fire-breathing dragon. Right, okay, so if you actually have a look at the clock, you'll see that the clock is actually melted in the theme of Salvador Dali, you see. Now this dragon is actually made out of a timber called camphor laurel, which actually does smell like camphor. And it has a most magnificent grain in it, and it just looks magnificent. Now this is actually a three-dimensional clock, because you can see that it actually has shape here on the side as well. Right, okay, now Marsha, believe it or not, she actually had children. So, so here's the children here. Oh, the little hummingbird there, that's the three-dimensional. What we're actually going to do is actually show you how we actually manufacture. Right, okay, here's the pattern. We drill a hole for the clock movement in here. So we drill a hole, get that, our clock's going to fit in there all right, righto. Now we drill a hole and put our blade through it, and we start cutting our clock out. So we go right around here, follow right around, and we go right around here, come back to where we started. That's pretty good. So we've got the shape of the clock. Now to get our third dimension, we actually have to get the shape. So we drill another hole, and we drill, and we put our blade through it, and we cut out again. And we go right around. Now what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to take the clock out of the middle. Let's just see, we might actually zip out the back, might be easier. Comes out the back.
What kind of machinery do you use to actually cut them out in that.
Oh, okay. We've got a scroll saw here. Actually, we've actually got a scroll saw which uses these sorts of blades. Now I use generally down here smaller blades because all my stuff is very small, and to get an idea of what we call small, we would use as an example Roadrunner. So actually we got down there. So here's Roadrunner. So we're using relatively small blades, and it's just those holds of blades, and the blade just jumps up and down. So all it is a motorised fret saw. So the blade just jumps up and down like that. The safest tool, workshop tool you can actually get. You just basically can't hurt yourself with it. So you can get different size blades. This is just one style of blades that we have here. And so we're basically down here. And you can get down here to almost the size of a human hair. You know, they're really used for jewelers and stuff like that, but sometimes I use them in my jigsaws. What actually happened was they introduced quartz movements, which made clocks really, really accurate. You know, you used to be able to, you can tell your time really, really easily. And so accurate clocks actually didn't get you there on time. They actually told you very accurately how late you were. So obviously there's a problem with the numbers. So we actually had to build a clock that solved the problem. So here's our clock that solves all the problems. Okay, this clock is always right no matter what happens. Right, okay, let's get to our very first clock. This is the very first clock that I built, and it's actually made of Brazilian rosewood. Now, I put criteria on myself which is totally unnecessary. If you're going to build a wooden clock, make it out of wood. So, okay, this clock runs at 98%. It has a nylon cord and it has a rock for a weight. But it's a 4-shaft clock, which means the second hand goes back to front. So, and not only that, you actually have to set the hour hand by itself to set the time, which is pretty hopeless. And it just unscrews. This one will just unscrew, you'll just unwind it, and it will all fall apart. So we're at 98%, right, okay, and what we're actually going to do with the rock is we're going to change it to petrified wood so that we can actually go up to one more piece of wood. So we're going to be at 99%. We've actually got another 98% wooden clock, but this one time it's actually made out of red gum. Right, okay, now I've actually, it was originally an English design which I've actually modified because I like to run 1 second pendulums, and so what we actually did was change the height of the clock, change the gear ratio in it, change the shape of the gears, put lantern pinions in it, and modified it so we could actually set the hands by, if you could reach them, you could set the hands just by the minute hand. That would automatically set the hour hand. And this is a hollow cylinder. There's a hollow cylinder, but this time it's actually got metal in it. So we're still running at 98%. We just haven't got the getting right up there to get 100% right. What we've actually got is we've got tapered pins there that hold it all together, so you can just pull it apart by hand, no tools required. So we're running at 98%. If we go over to this side, this clock is actually running at 99%. So the weight in this situation is just a piece of wood. Right, okay, now we've actually, this is my version of that clock over there, which is the 4-shaft design, so I've changed it to a 3-shaft design. I've put lantern pinions in it. It's got lignum vitae bearings in it, which is, lignum vitae is a naturally greasy wood, so reduce the friction. It's lantern pinions, as I say, I can set the hands, but so I've actually got the second hand going clockwise. It's a 3-shaft design. And not only that, this will run 24 hours on one winding. Got to 99%. Is there a more difficult way of actually building a clock? And of course, obviously there is. So what we'll actually do is we'll build a clock that doesn't even have a round gear in it. So this clock here is an English design that had silver steel shafting, 13 ball races, a carbon fibre rod, 1 kilogram weight, and was accurate to 2 minutes a day. So what we've actually got to do is we've actually got to redesign it so we can actually, say, pull it apart by hand. So if you wanted to pull it apart, you would just pull it apart by hand, no tools required. no Allen keys like the original. We'd actually make it as much wood as possible. So this is running 99% wood, just unfortunately the nylon cord. So we're up to 99%, even though we actually haven't replaced the nylon cord. That's the next job, which we're working on, and should actually be finished. So if we go to this side of the room, we can actually find that we do have our nylon cord replacement. And so here is our chain, our wooden chain, which is designed for here's a 100% wooden clock. Look, here's our dial. It says 100% wood, and that will actually fit on this clock, which is actually here. And so that will just fit in there like so. Be pretty good. So we're back here to our bird, and perhaps we should show you the bird because it is just so fabulous. So we'll get around, and in all of God's marvellous creation, the hummingbird is the only bird that can fly backwards. So we've got our little hummingbird here, and he's going to fly down into the flower and be really tremendous. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to prepare ourselves for flight. So what we'll do is we'll just drop our tail down here. Look at that, we'll drop our tail down and we'll just start flying down into the flower. Now when we get to the flower, we're going to fan our tail here like that and give it a flick. And we will just hover there while we actually look at the flower. Suck the nectar out of that flower. Now what we're actually going to do is get ourselves ready for flight out again. So what we'll do is we'll drop our tail, give it a flick, and we'll fly back out again like that. Isn't that just absolutely fabulous? Look at the motion of those wings. It's just marvellous. Righto, young Kai. There's the red button. Press the red button. That's it. Tremendous. See the bird getting ready to fly back down into the flower. Right, okay, so what we're going to do is we'll just get our tail and stabilise our flight. Look at that. Stabilise our flight. Right, okay, give our tail a little bit of a wiggle. Tighten our tail up while we hover there. Get our tail ready again. Give it a flick. Close it right up. Now we'll hover back back out again. We'll fly back out again. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at that. We've closed our tail right up. Now we're going to lift our head a couple of times here to have a look at this flower, and it's pretty good. I love that nectar. So what we'll do is we'll just do all that over again. So we'll get ourselves ready. We'll fly back down here. Look, we'll just get our tail ready, and we'll fly back down into the flower. Stabilise our flight when we get our wings forward. Look at that, our tail. As soon as our wings are very far forward, we'll get our tail out, ready, splash. Yep. Suck the nectar out of this flower.
So how long did it actually take to make this?
This was actually very quick because it's got 28 bearings in it and the motor and shafts and whatever, and I'd already known how to build it before. So this was actually a very quick build. It took a lot of time to work out what I was actually going to do though. There was a lot of, there was a couple of months involved, and the evolution of the flower was pretty involved. There were 3 different flowers that we actually made before we ended up putting them all together and ending up with that flower. We had to introduce a base and stick our name in the bottom. Now colibri is actually Spanish for hummingbird, so that's where the name comes from. And these things in here are actually called hypocycloid gears. Now there's 3 of them. And they're a rather interesting piece of equipment because we actually have a shaft with an eccentric on it, and the eccentric is in the middle of a flower. Look at the shape of this flower here. Now the flower has 8 sides, but it winds itself around 10 pins. Now you will try and work that out, okay? So it winds these little pins here, it winds itself around 10. but it's only got 8 sides, so it winds itself in and out as it goes around there. Now inside the flower is a circle, and inside that circle, a pin in the cam, so you can see the shape of the cam here, is a pin. There are 4 of them, and they follow that circle around inside each one of that flower. They follow around. Now what it actually does is give a 4-to-1 reduction in a negative direction in a very compact space. They're called hypocycloid reducers. So that's a relatively complicated piece of kit, isn't it, really? This one just lifts up and you can see the tail fans, how tremendous that is.
Still amazing to look at.
So we're at the toy shop, so if we turn the lights out, we could actually have a look at the toy shop. We'll actually So we've got our carousel, and there's our carousel, and of course carousels make a lot of music, and of course they operate. What we're actually going to do is actually make the dog and cat. So here's our dog and cat. You can see now, here's the change of hardwood to sapwood here, and you can see how it looks like a zebra. Right, okay, so what we're actually going to do is we'll actually make a dog and cat fight. So what we'll actually do is we'll actually make them have a fight, right? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll actually make them have a fight. So here we go.
My goodness.
There are 9 movements in the dog and cat fight. If you really want challenges, what about a cryptex? Now, Dan Brown invented these things to write the Da Vinci Code. Now, everyone reckoned that Da Vinci invented it, but it was actually Dan Brown. But I'm sure there were cryptexes around before Dan Brown wrote the. Anyway, so this particular one has 5 rings, and they've got every letter of the alphabet. So 26 by 26 by 26 by 26 by 26 equals 11,881,376. Right, okay, so there's the number of combinations you've got to have before you can get the combination out of it. And look at that, I've actually got a secret message in there. It's actually a secret message from my grandson. How tremendous is that? Right, okay, so here's our secret message. So, having a look, what do you reckon would be, this right through here would be the combination. Kai, what do you reckon it would be? Right, reading right through the middle.
Gorges? Gorges?
Got ya!
Got ya. Guess I'm the one who gets pranked.
The other one that got pranked, yes. So here we actually have a little bit of jewellery. We've been mucking around with butterflies, of course.
Ooh.
So here we actually have some butterflies. Our little bit of mucking around with jewellery and whatever. So actually here we actually have a butterfly that's actually made out of mirror perspex. For the competition, I actually manufactured a necklace and ear studs. So of course we're into hummingbirds here, of course, naturally. So we actually have our hummingbird and our left and right handed ear studs. Other clocks, they definitely do go wrong. And sometimes you just end up with your numbers in the funny places, don't you? Really? You know, like, it's just... We reinterpret our picture like this. So we actually have our woody woodpecker on the side, and we actually have our...
Wow. What kind of wood is that?
That is Osage orange. And of course here we actually have our hummingbird, but we actually have it as a brooch. We actually have it as a brooch. Now that clock that's chiming is actually the Whittington chimes, and Dick Whittington was the mayor of London. So we have two clocks in the shed that actually chime the Whittington chimes, and all the rest, there's about another 9 or 10 that actually play the Westminster chimes. I'm sort of like a bit of a tailor, and I actually have to manufacture my stuff to suit my cloth. And my cloth, when I ended up cutting something out before, I ended up with a long skinny piece with a bit of a flag on it. And I thought, how can I do that? My mind was wandering all over the place, and I ended up with lampposts of all things. And so I put two lamppost silhouettes together, and then we just sort of added a cat and a hummingbird and whatever and made that. And that's actually made out of kitchen bench top material. This might just illustrate what I'm actually doing. So this is actually a full-size clock, and if you actually can see the veins through the leaves, they're actually saw cuts.
How long does it take to make such such precise cuts like that?
Well, it's actually drilling the hole is the problem, making sure that you don't break the drill, because the drill's down to 16 thousandths of an inch. Now, of course, we've got a horse here, and of course a horse eats hay from a bale. So that's actually a fiddleback red gum. And of course, while we're here, we should talk about this clock and our Anzac. And our Anzac is actually made from a branch of Gallipoli lone pine. Most of my patterns come out of America, well, ideas anyway. So anyway, this clock is an American design, but it's this big. And I just didn't think that would look quite right, so I made it half size. But I looked at the pattern and I said, well, that's pretty tremendous. I love that as a pattern. What can you do with it? So you just stick it in the computer and you end up with that. How does that end up with that? But anyway, that's what it does, yeah. Basically, you would call this lacework in wood. That's just lacework in wood, isn't it, really? If you see my size of my hand behind there, it's just not very big.
Always been a fan of Roman numerals?
Yes, and we always have Charles II faces on our Roman numerals, right, okay, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, as you know, IV is the number 4 in Roman numerals, but on a clock, it is 1, 2, 3, 4. And the reason is that Charles II decided that he wanted a clock, and the clockmakers were making it all, and they chipped away there and made IV, and he said, oh, I'm sorry, fellas, it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4. And they said, excuse me, Your Majesty, Roman numerals are IV. And he said, no, it's not, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And they said, no, it's not, it's IV. And he said, I am the king, which meant I get my own way. Right, okay, so I am the king. Right, okay, now, the reason is it aesthetically balances the weight of the number 8 on that side. And you would say, well, Peter Pan always comes with Tinkerbell. And of course, if you have Peter Pan,
There's always Captain Hook.
there's always Captain Hook. And so when they get together, what do? They actually have a sword fight, don't they? So here we actually have a sword fight. Victorian Ash, which was actually a building at one stage of the game, someone's beautiful home, which was just pulled down and demolished, and we just took the timber out of that. And it's got walnut numbers, red gum rings, but the rest of it's just ordinary builder's hardwood Victorian Ash.
Thanks for the tour around. How do other people would find you?
They just actually give me a ring to make sure that I'm actually home and not in the workshop. But I'm basically open all the time, anytime you can come. So, yeah, just give us a ring, make sure I'm here, and quite welcome to see you.
Right, yeah. Thanks for your time, Newton.
Very
And
good.
It's been a great...
Thank you, Kai. Tremendous.